Today's episode has been brought to you by Schedulicity.
And also by my pelvic health training, which is happening in Meaford, Ontario, September 19th and 20th of 2020. There are a few spots open in this training still. If you are wanting to meet up in person and take in 2 days of learning how to bring in yoga for pelvic health into your group classes, into your one-on-one sessions, and into workshops, this is the place to hang out. For more information about any of the trainings and events that I will be part of, go to theconnectedyogateacher.com and look under trainings and events. Hello and welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Crow. I'm a mom of 3, a yoga teacher, and a trainer and consultant who works for yoga teachers. This podcast was created for you so that you can connect to the information and inspiration every single week and feel supported as you navigate the questions and the challenges that you will face as not only a yoga teacher, but also, let's face it, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur. And I get it, connected yoga teachers, no matter what business you own, when you own a small business, there are some big challenges and big questions that come up along the way. I feel like I've had one of those weeks where a lot of big decisions, big questions, and big things have been coming at me. And I just want you to know that I'm right here alongside you. And this is why the podcast was born, so that you can find the support that you need. All of our show notes are ready for you for this episode over at theconnectedyogateacher.com/160. Thanks to Crunch and her amazing work, you do not have to take notes. We take the notes for you, and you can easily go back and just click on any timestamp and jump right to that section. Today's episode is super personal. It is all about the milestones in my yoga business. I did not come up with this topic idea. I would say I'm even a little bit uncomfortable to share because it made me think so much, and I'm actually not sure if I'm answering it correctly. Here's how this question came about. I put it out there a while ago that I would love to hear questions from you, especially if you feel comfortable leaving me a voicemail. So if you go to theconnectedyogateacher.com, over on the right-hand side of our website, you'll see this button that allows you to leave me a voicemail. So Isabel did that. Thank you so much for doing that. And here is her question.
How do you know that your business has grown to certain levels or milestones? And what would you name those milestones within your business the last couple of years? What are the different pieces that make your entire business? And how long did it take you to put them all together? Thanks again.
Whoa, Isabel, I feel like I just need to take this deep breath with your question. Thank you again for sending this in. It made me not only sit and think for a little bit, I actually thought about this for a while. So I talked with a few friends about it, asked them, what do you think the milestones in my business are? Or what are they in your business? It's really easy to consider the last 3 years of this podcast and the different milestones. And this is immediately where my mind was going. And I'm happy to share that with you. But I first want to acknowledge that your question made me think back even further to where this all began, because it began way before the podcast. It also made me think of this mix of my own unique personality and then the experiences that I've had along the way through yoga teacher training, through life experiences, school, all of the things that have made me the yoga teacher that I am. I once had a yoga student approach me after class who said, I want to take other classes just like this one. How can I find other teachers like you? In that moment, I was trying to be helpful and tell her about teachers who had taken training similar to mine, or teachers that I connected with in the area who it felt to me like they were teaching a similar type of yoga. But inside, I had this light bulb moment thinking, you know what? There are no other teachers in the world that can share yoga like I can. And I'm not saying this because, I have this special thing that no one else has. We all have this special thing that no one else has as yoga teachers. So that day I had mixed in some yoga dance, some Kundalini yoga, some self-awakening yoga, and this was all filtered through my own at-home practice and then shared out with these students. I know that all of you are doing that as yoga teachers. You cannot bottle this up and reproduce it. You can create trainings that have a really solid foundation of information and experiences, but every single person is then going to take that and share it out into the world in their own way. So this is a really beautiful thing. This is why yoga teachers need to take a look at their own really personal value through this lens. You are here to offer a type of yoga that no one else can. This really clears away the competition and comparison that can creep in when we forget to look at things through this lens. And the same is true for any person in any business. So I want to share today some of my milestones and also some things that I have never shared on the podcast. So I'm about to, open up here a little bit, crack open a little bit. And before I do that, I want to give a little shout out to a couple of people. So the first shout out is a thank you to Devorah Clark, who left a review about the podcast, really specifically about episode 130 with Emily Sussel. So Devorah said, I teach seniors gentle yoga in Richland Hills, Texas. I'm listening to this interview with Emily Sussel after just finishing a teacher training course, Yoga for Arthritis. And wow, I've now got a business plan after listening to this interview. What a life changer. Thanks. Oh my goodness, Devorah, thank you so much for taking the time to leave the review. I know there are a few steps when you leave a review on iTunes. This means a lot that you took the time to take these few steps. And I'm so thrilled that you feel like this was a life changer, this episode. I will make sure to link to this episode in our show notes. It's a great one, especially for the teachers who want to teach one-on-one yoga. All this month, I've been talking about the podcast turning 3 years old. And if you want to get us a gift, a review is the best way to do that. You can see where you can leave a review on our show notes page. You can go to iTunes to do it, or you can leave a review on our Facebook page. Tell us about your favorite podcast episode in that review, or tell us, how this is helping you or not helping you. This is the place for you to share your feedback about the podcast. If you already left a review, tell another yoga teacher about an episode that you really like. That's another great way to say thanks. For those of you who have done both of those things, I want you to just give yourself a little pat on the back right now and maybe a little hug, because that means a lot. And we're really thrilled that you are sharing the podcast and supporting us. I also want to give a shout out to the entire team at Schedulicity. Every single week, we get questions in the Connected Yoga Teacher group about an online scheduling software, and I feel like a broken record, but a very happy broken record. Schedulicity is my absolute favorite online scheduling software. 3 reasons. The software is amazing. The price is fantastic. The customer service is probably one of my favorite things. They are just such a fantastic group of people over there. Let's hear our hot tip of the week from one of the rock stars at Schedulicity.
Hey there, Connected Yoga teachers. This is Brendan with the Schedulicity Hot Tip of the Week. Schedulicity takes all of the guesswork out of creating an online business. You can stay organized and keep your booking, class rosters, payment processing, detailed analytic reports, and email marketing all in one place. Offer deals and stay in contact with your clients effortlessly. It's easy to follow our step-by-step setup instructions, and you never even have to leave the couch while you professionally establish your business or take your existing organization to the next level.
Thank you so much, Team Schedulicity. Alrighty, let's get back to this question from Isabel. Now, before we go further, I'd actually love for everyone listening to do some reflection on this question. Take a look at where you began in your yoga journey, maybe your yoga teacher training journey, and where you are now. And let's hear Isabel's question again, like she's asking it to you this time.
How do you know that your business has grown to certain levels or milestones? And what would you name those milestones within your business the last couple years? What are the different pieces that make your entire business? And how long did it take you to put them all together? Thanks again.
If you want to press pause now and do your own reflection before listening to mine, this is a great place to do that. I would love to hear from you if you do some reflection and you can label some of these milestones or the pieces of your business. Okay, so let me dive in. Isabel, I want to tell you that I like very concrete answers. So I am going to try to define some milestones. But before I do that, let me give you a bit of a backstory because I think this is a factor in the how and why I became an entrepreneur and specifically a yoga teacher entrepreneur. I can't remember when it was that I thought that being an entrepreneur was an option. I don't remember actually not knowing this as a possibility either, though. And I wonder if maybe I was born thinking like an entrepreneur. I do remember one summer we had a babysitter, so I had to have been at least 10 years or younger. And I created this, I had this idea that I was going to make money with a baking table at the end of our laneway. So for those of you who are from the US, maybe you say driveway, we say laneway. For the little path, gravel or whatever it is that leads to your house, we say that's a laneway. I've had American friends call me out on that. Okay, so I had a bake table at the end of the lane, and this is where I sold some baked goods. I felt amazing from this. So my babysitter seemed to be on board. My mom was away at work. I remember that. Both of my parents were. My brother would have been there with me. I probably made him pitch in even though he didn't want to. That's what I'm guessing, is that I convinced him or told him this was a great idea. And I remember feeling really amazing about the profits until Mom got home from work and gently explained to me that I was making money because she was paying for all of the supplies. So it was this light bulb moment. Like, I just thought, I did this thing, I did the work, I baked these things, I made the money. I didn't give any consideration into how much it cost to buy the things needed to bake those things. And Mom said, for what you charge, the amount that you charged, you would not have made a profit if you had to pay for the supplies. She wasn't angry or anything. I think she was just trying to get it through to me that a business wasn't all about the profit. You also had expenses. So that was really young on. Also, my grandparents used to let me run this very antique cash register. And my grandmother actually gave it to me. I should grab a photo for all of you and put it in my Instagram feed so that you can see it. So if you head over to Shannon Crow Yoga, and there's 2 underscores in there, it's Shannon_Crow_yoga. I feel like if you just type in Shannon Crow Yoga, I should pop up. Then I will have a photo of this antique cash register. Maybe I'll even see if I can grab a video. And my grandparents had this at their farmer's market. I feel like running this antique cash register also instilled this whole excitement around, being the person who did the customer service. People would pick their berries or do whatever they were doing, buy their maple syrup or their asparagus, whatever season it was, and come into the entranceway at the farm. And that's where it was kind of like my little office. I had paper there. I got to make change. My grandma taught me how to make change. It was a really good math lesson for sure. She taught me how to count it out and count it back to people. So I feel like that was definitely a part of things as well. Fast forward a little bit, I used to be part of a family farm where we raised grass-fed organic beef. And this period of time hit when mad cow disease arrived in North America. And I needed to figure out a way to make money in that time. I saw how the market could change in a blink of an eye and that it was really out of our hands, out of our control. The other thing about farming is that we got paid once a year. And this is where I really learned to pay debt first. And I had the feeling and this thought or this drive inside of me to pay more than I actually thought I could afford. Because I found out that when I did that, I would still make ends meet in some way. And I would budget like crazy. So when Mad Cow hit North America, I decided that's it. We need a source of income that isn't going to rely on the grass-fed organic beef. So I started a farmer's market. It made the front page of the paper because it was this idea that I had, and I was doing it in the face of Mad Cow. And I remember overhearing an elder farmer from our community telling someone that he thought the idea was crazy. And this was 3 years in. So I remember overhearing this conversation of this crazy idea that this farmer down the road had. And I have to tell you that it was successful the very first year in. But apparently, to some people, like farmers in my community, it was a really wild idea. I raised my 3 kids while gardening these 2 acres and selling organic vegetables. I had a market every single Friday for 11 weeks of the year because here in Canada, our growing season is fairly short. Like we plant around the end of May and you can harvest into September, but we have to really watch when frost hits. And I remember one year frost hit on June the 6th. I'll never forget because I had 130 tomato plants in the ground that I had to cover overnight. I remember my son Wyatt helping me. He was able to walk and help, but he wasn't that old. The farmer's market was a lot of work, but it was also a lot of fun and it was a lot of learning as an entrepreneur. So we had this slogan, it was "Get Fresh on Fridays." And I love looking back at those days. We had hats that said "Get Fresh on Fridays," and a lot of people wanted to get a hold of those hats. We had cloth bags. I actually still have one when I go to the grocery store. I always have this little wave of memory of that. And a huge reason for this is because I love gardening, especially when it's really neat rows of vegetables that I can feed people with. I had a lot of help in the garden as well. I hired some help, and then we also had a program which at the time was called Willing Workers on Organic Farms, WWOOF. WWOOF. I think it still exists, but I feel like it's called something different now. So these people would come in from all over the world, and they really became like family to me. So at one point, we even had up to 8 people living there. We called them woofers. So these willing workers on organic farms, the idea was there was a trade. They could stay and have accommodations and food in exchange for about 6 hours of work, whatever farm work that was, during the day. These people helped with the garden, but they also, shared meals with us and really interacted with the kids. It was a really fun time, and it was the next best thing to traveling. It was like other people from other cultures came into our home and shared their cultures with us. This all happened before I became a yoga teacher. So I became a yoga teacher then in those years, right near the end of the market garden. And I marketed my yoga classes with brochures that I handed out at the market. I remember doing that. We had other vendors who would come in on Fridays and they all paid money. It was $20 per week per table, if I remember correctly. And I took all of that $20 that I made and I spent it on advertising for the market. And anything that I made off of my own table was my income. I feel like I had mastered the whole idea of like, here are my expenses, here's my income, this is what my profit is now. I'd come a long way from that end of the lane bake sale, I think. After my divorce, I had to figure out how to use my very tiny yoga and Thai yoga massage business to live on while raising 3 kids. I paid all of my bills for me and the kids on my salary alone and my baby bonus. So this is a Canadian thing. You get paid here in Canada a certain amount per child, really based on what your income is. So I don't know what the range is. I know when I talk to people from other countries who don't have a baby bonus, they're always quite envious of this. This is one thing when we pay high taxes in Canada, higher taxes, we have things like this. So basically, I had my income to depend on, and I never felt like I could depend on my baby bonus. I mean, the government can change their mind. That was exactly as in the name, a bonus. And obviously, it's not a money-making thing. Any of you who have children who need like new winter boots and new coats and things, that's where all of that money went. Okay. At the same time as I was focused on building this yoga business and my Thai yoga massage business, which would support me, I also managed yoga studios and did admin work on the side for those yoga studios. I did a tiny bit of cleaning houses and waiting tables when times got really lean. And I have to tell you that I'm very thrifty. I don't mind that people make fun of me for this. I can save and I can go without for many things. My kids tease me a lot about how I can find secondhand furniture on the side of the road. And they're teasing me because I do love to find side of the road furniture, especially when it comes to kitchen chairs. My grandpa said to me these words that stick with me. He said, "It doesn't matter what you make, it matters what you save." And that makes so much sense to me. That grandpa is actually still alive. He's almost 90 years old. He's still working in his garden, and he still will figure out ways to save money for sure. You know, sometimes I look at lessons like this and I think, are my kids going to get those lessons? You know, am I going to really get those lessons? Here's one way to illustrate how much my grandpa taught me to save. In Canada here, we have milk bags. I feel like this is a very Canadian episode all of a sudden. So to my American friends, I know it's very confusing. You buy this bag of milk, and inside that bag are 3 smaller bags of milk. And I just remember Amanda McKinney being here and being like, well, how do you use that bag? You have a milk jug that you fit the bag in. Maybe I can also put a photo of a milk bag, like in a milk jug, so that you can see a picture of our milk pitcher. Those are 2 different words. Too hard with audio. Okay. So we have a milk bag. You cut the little corner off. You have to know what you're doing. This is like a Canadian skill for sure. Okay, so let me get back to the point of my story with my grandpa and the saving. At the very end of the milk bag, when it would get all used up, I just remember my grandfather saying to me, "Look at this. Hold on 1 second before you open that other milk bag." He'd take out the milk bag and he would straighten the corners and then pour out this little bit that would be left in the bag. And he's like, think about it. Think if you pour this little bit out every single time you get milk, think about how much milk that adds up to. You know, as the second generation from my grandfather, we will do this as a joke, but he's right. Like he's really right in how over the years or over, times of having more, because my grandpa was raised in a family of 10 kids by his mom on her own for so long, because her husband died young, they would have had to go without for sure. It was the times as well as, having so many kids. All that to say, Isabel, I hope you're still with me. You're not like, oh my gosh, get to the milestones already, Shannon. All that to say, that is one of those things in my makeup of who I am. This being thrifty, saving, like getting by with what I have. So I knew that I wanted to be around for my kids when they were young, and I wanted to do work that I loved. I really always believed that I could be happy doing work that I loved. So I wanted both worlds. I wanted my kids to have experiences over things that I could buy. So I really focused on how can I travel with my kids instead of buying them all of the fancy things that they would want. Actually, all 3 kids came with me to Costa Rica one year when I was taking a yoga teacher training. That was not my first yoga teacher training. I'm trying to think. I feel like it was maybe the second yoga teacher training. And I was just listening to a friend the other day saying that her and her boyfriend, shout out to Betty and Barry. I feel like I talk about Betty a lot on the podcast. You're going to get to meet her very soon, actually. I think in the next episode. She told me that her and Barry really focus on buying each other experiences instead of things. And so this was a big part of how I wanted to raise my kids. And I also wanted to be there for them. I didn't want to be working full time all the time and have them in daycare. It's just who I am as a person. It's just the makeup that goes into all of the backstory of this. And I have to clarify at this point to you, Isabel, who asked the question, and to fellow yoga teachers, none of this along the way felt like a clear path. So this is me reflecting back on some things that really set my foundation as an entrepreneur. I did not, think along the way, oh, here I go, like exactly down the path. There were lots of bumps in the road, lots of twists and turns and things that were out of my control or things that changed, because that's the way life is. For example, I applied for 2 jobs that I didn't get. And I think now how I owe this huge amount of gratitude for that. Like being turned down for a job doesn't really sound something that we would be grateful for, but I definitely would not have said that on the day when I didn't get the job. I applied for those jobs when I was feeling like giving up on the whole entrepreneur thing. This was different times along the way. This has actually happened right before I started the podcast. In those times, Sean, my partner Sean, was a huge supporter, and he encouraged me to try, even though I didn't have a clear plan of how starting this podcast would even pay the bills or keep me employed. He was just like, go for it. We'll figure it out. So that's another key piece, is that I have a super supportive partner now. I'm trying to think. Sean's going to say, what? I'm trying to think what year it is. That's all. Sean, if you're listening to this, I'm trying to think how many years we've lived together. We've lived together for almost 9 years. Okay, so for 9 years, I feel like I've been very blessed and very lucky to have a very supportive partner. It's not like I've forgotten our anniversary, Sean. That would be another podcast. You'll also get to hear from Sean on the podcast soon. I'm very excited about that because I wanted him to come and chat about something that he does as a yoga teacher and as an entrepreneur. I'm popping in here for a moment, connected yoga teachers, with a word from today's sponsor, YoMassage.
Hi, this is Tiffany, co-founder of YoMassage here with your touching moment tip. We know doing an intake with clients is important for physical health reasons, but what about mental and emotional health? Especially when incorporating touch, it's important to do an intake prior to class so you can go into the class ensuring clients feel safe, knowing that you are taking all of their needs into consideration. In a Mindful Touch by YoMassage class, clients fill out intakes with their touch preferences. It's hard to remember every client's preference, so we make sure to set the preference sheet right next to each client's mat. This helps the practitioner feel secure, but it also lets the client know that you're not going to forget what they requested. You can find out more about Mindful Touch by YoMassage and our mission to make therapeutic touch accessible at yomassage.com.
Okay, let's get back into the episode. So in terms of the work that I do now, I want to try and outline the big milestones that I can pinpoint. And just so you know, Isabel, with your really good question, I took a break from trying to jot things down. Like I was really like, okay, let me try and jot these things down. And I went for a drive with Sean to the library and I talked this through, and it just isn't an easy question. But I have to tell you that I have really enjoyed the reflection time that it brought me. So the very first thing that I can think of is this business mindset, which includes money mindset. When this really started, I decided that instead of helping every yoga teacher that reached out to me, whether it was through phone, email, or at a training, with their business questions, yoga teachers would approach me a lot with their business questions. I reached this point where I knew that I couldn't just help every yoga teacher for free. I had to start to charge for my time. And I have to tell you that it wasn't easy at first. I'm a real giver. I know a lot of you who are listening are also very giving and very kind, and you want to help. And that's why you became yoga teachers. I knew, though, I could keep giving this for free and then I'd have to get a 9-to-5 job, or I could make this my job and give when I had time. I could give in different ways. I could give donations. I could give my time. Like, that's why I love to do the podcast consultation calls every once in a while. Those are free, so I can give my time and also give back to the podcast listeners if we decide to use the episode. I also knew that in building a business, every time I felt like I wanted to give something away for free, I could create content like this podcast, like articles that I like to write, or online videos, as long as I kept in mind about promoting my online offerings or my paid offerings. When I saw my value, then I got up the nerve to ask to be paid. And I started to feel really solid in that, especially also in my yoga classes. I started leading registered sessions, and someone would come up to me and say, I'm going to have to miss one class. And I had my policy in place for that. And I felt really confident in saying it. So this is how my consultation side of the business was built. It was very slow and steady. There was a point where I was doing a lot of help for yoga teachers for free and not charging for it. And then there was a point where my rates were much lower than they are today. It didn't happen overnight. It was slow and steady, and I don't feel like, I've, reached this level. I've got it now. But I definitely know that having this business mindset and this money mindset is very important. If you do not want to be an entrepreneur and run a business, then you need to look at, how am I going to make my income doing something else, like working for someone else, or, maybe you're an artist and you get paid to create things. I think often, though, our artists and creators still are small business owners and entrepreneurs. I don't know. Think of another example if you can. Send it to me if you think, oh, wait, this person works for themselves and doesn't own their own business. Tell me if you can think who that is. So another piece of this was that I learned that in order to keep going and to keep helping, a lot of yoga teachers have told me how helpful this podcast and the Connected Yoga Teacher group are. So in order to keep doing that, I knew that I needed to make an income. I don't think I knew how to do this on my own. It was my business coach at the time, Natalie Ekdahl of the Biz Chicks podcast, that talked to me about how I needed to make money, make an income to keep going. And this is I owe a lot of gratitude to Natalie for this. This is why it works so well. She asked me to think of the goal of my podcast. So the goal of my podcast I knew was to help yoga teachers. And then she asked me, how are you going to monetize that early on? So I am thankful for this push. It did not feel comfortable. That's why I want to say it was a push, because I love podcasts. I wanted to help yoga teachers, but I figured out, and Natalie let me know going into this, it takes about 9 hours per episode for our team to put a podcast together. So I knew, okay, even if I'm doing this on my own, I have to monetize it. And fortunately, we have an amazing team so that I can pass off the work that doesn't feel like, oh, that's my thing. Suzanne does the audio editing, Crunch does the show notes. And now we've just gotten Sinead and Nick on our team who work at the Facebook group, as well as Sinead does some stuff with the artwork for the podcast. So the team is growing, the tasks are going off to other people. And in order to pay everyone, I need to make sure that I can make money. And the same is true for a yoga class or a yoga studio. So a little backstory, we rely on a couple of things here for income from the podcast. 3 things, I would say. Sponsorship. So Schedulicity is our sponsor each and every week. We absolutely love them. And also me advertising the trainings and events that I'm doing, and the consultation calls that I do one-on-one with yoga teachers. That's the income that then supports the podcast so that you can get free podcasts. Another piece of this, I said, is the money mindset. So the money and accounting piece of things, Isabel, I'm so glad that you made me do all of this reflection, because I hope this is helpful for our yoga teacher listeners. So I've shared my journey through many episodes, and that's thanks to our amazing guests who focus on and talk about money. I really think it is a conversation that we need to be having as yoga teachers, we need to be talking about money. And maybe you were brought up to not talk about money. And let's just sit with that for a minute and see how that feels. So here are some things that I do and that you could decide to do if you haven't already. One is get a separate bank account for your business. This I cannot stress enough. The difference that it makes to see all of your income come in and then to make your decisions based on that. I used to have my bank accounts all mixed up for a long time as an entrepreneur, and it didn't do me any favors. So if you take one thing away today and you decide to do one thing from this episode, go out there and get yourself a separate bank account. 2 is learn what you can claim for your business. So we have a couple of episodes on this, one from a Canadian bookkeeper and one from a US accountant. Definitely look at what are the expenses I can claim. 3 is look at your money. So I was trying this new thing of looking at my finances daily because Amanda Kingsmith of the MBOM podcast, shout out to you, Amanda, suggested this. I have to tell you, at the time of this recording, I've slipped away from this habit because I know it is in my personality to, I want to make this a verb, ostriching, or like being like an ostrich when it comes to my money. I'm going to make sure to link to some of my favorite money episodes in our show notes. So if you feel like, okay, Shannon, I'm up for this. I don't want to be an ostrich when it comes to my money. Nothing against ostriches. I want to take a look at my money as an entrepreneur, as a yoga teacher, then I want to share these links with you. So the bank account I did, looking at my money I'm working on. What was number 2? Oh, right. Knowing what I can claim for my business. Another thing that I have done within my business is to hire a bookkeeper who also talks to me about my money each and every month. So shout out to Kelly. She will be linked in these money episodes because we had her on the podcast talking about bookkeeping, what we can claim, and all kinds of accounting tips. The next thing for me on the horizon is I really want to do the profit first method. So I'd love to hear from you if you are facing a money struggle or if you know what's next on the horizon for you in terms of your business and your money mindset. Either share in the comments of the show notes or leave me a voicemail. I'd love to hear from you. If any of this money talk or this business talk feels uncomfortable, I just want to leave you with one thought here. If I had gone through for an electrician and I started a business, I can guarantee that no one would question that I was running a business. There's something about being a yoga teacher, though, that makes people question, is this a real business? I hear yoga teachers saying, I'm just a yoga teacher. Let's take that out. You could say I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a small business owner, I'm a yoga teacher. You know, I love to talk about niching, but that's not what this episode is about yet. So what is it that makes people question that teaching yoga is a business? I had to get really super clear in my own mind to be able to set my prices confidently. And I have to keep working on my money mindset. I need to remember to raise my rates. I need to do this on a regular basis. You know, something that did happen with my money is that I held off on raising my one-on-one yoga rates. And that meant that all of a sudden, for me to feel good about, showing up, I had to actually have a big jump in my rates. So I learned the hard way that I need to look at this on a more regular basis. I need to make my decisions. I had looked at what I had made teaching one-on-one yoga compared to a lot of the other work that I do, and I knew in order for me to hold on to this and not feel, like, oh, I could be doing this other thing where I make so much more money, I need to be looking at my prices. I need to be looking at the story that's going on around my money. Actually, I want to also link to a really amazing podcast episode that Abby Herman did. And it's all, I can't remember the guest that was on there. Sorry, Abby and guest. It was an amazing episode on the story that your money is telling you. So I'll make sure to link to that as well in the show notes. So that's all part of number 1. having this business and money mindset as a yoga teacher. I feel like that's one of the biggest milestones, but I also just want to clarify, Isabel and all of our listeners, that I am still in it. It doesn't mean that I've reached the milestone and whoop, I'm past it. I am still working on it. Now, for all of you listening and thinking, oh my gosh, that was just one point. The next few are going to be a lot quicker. So number 2 milestone that I feel like I found in my business is know your why. So your message needs to be louder than all of the fears and roadblocks and learning that you need to do. I listened to a message from someone when I was going to start this podcast, and they said, feel the fears, do it anyway, do it when your message is louder than your fears, and you will make it happen. And I really believe this. So I didn't just dive into podcasting. I started a weekly live show over at the Connected Yoga Teacher page. So this was again thanks to Natalie for suggesting this, and it's actually in a coaching call that we have, and I can link to that episode. I feel like it was episode number 5 that we did. It was a coaching call on her podcast, and I brought it over here on ours. Right now I'm cringing a little bit because I'm thinking, oh my goodness, you can still go back and find those videos. They're still there. And I think of how nervous I was and how new at all of this I was. It was terrifying, but I did it anyway. And it got me ready to podcast because, I was doing live videos. So switching to recorded audio felt like a walk in the park. And the other thing is that I knew my why in terms of the questions that yoga teachers were asking me. So know your why and know your audience. What are they struggling with? How can you help them? Number 3 is systems, processes, and planning. So when you have a system, and for me, this system right now is Trello, I open that up every workday and I see what's in my to-do column, and that works really well. On the days when instead I think, I'll just check my email, or, let me just pop on Instagram and see what stories are there, the system doesn't work. So the system is only as good as me, but if I make a point to go and check on Trello, then it works really well. Also, working in my business is very different from when I step back and work on my business. And in episode 95, I talk more about the planning of a CEO that goes into my business. And so I'll make sure to link to that in the show notes. I also have come to this new realization or this different thing, and I'm working on it. I'm working on how can I share this as a podcast episode. But the thought is that I get to design my business. I get to design my ideal schedule. And we have an episode on that as well. But I feel like lately I've been doing a practice that's taking it one step further. And I will try and share that on a podcast. It's on my list. So number 1 was our business mindset and money mindset. Number 2 is know your why. Number 3 are these systems, processes, and planning. And number 4 for me was really accepting and asking for help. This looks different for everyone. Sometimes this is hiring someone to do the cleaning or to clear the snow from your laneway, especially here in Canada, especially today. Someone came in and did that. But also think of the way you can collaborate with people who are doing something similar to you. So I talk a lot about the collaboration that Amanda McKinney and I have. She's a fellow podcaster who also works with yoga teachers. And we're part of a mastermind with 2 other podcasters who work with yoga teachers. And we ask each other a lot of questions in there. And we ask for help in there. And it is so good to get other perspectives. So maybe this looks like you have a mastermind of peers, or you do networking with people, or you have a quick, phone conversation or tea or online Zoom get together with someone. And I would say someone who does something similar to you. If you can come to the place where you realize this person isn't my competition. If we work together in community, we can build each other's businesses together. Now that takes a really good, symbiotic relationship, but it is easier to build than you think. So the last part in this is number 5, specializing and niche work. And this is a process. There is no magic button. I would say I work with people all of the time who are trying to define their niche, and I learn different tricks and tips that work. One thing that works really well is to say to someone, what would you take off your plate? Of all the things that you offer, what's one thing that would be the first thing to go? Doesn't mean that it has to go this year, today, even in the next 5 years. But if you were to look at all of your offerings, what would be the first one that you would take away? On the flip side of that, what are you really excited to do? For those of you who have been following along the life of this podcast, or even my entire yoga journey, you'll know that I've had many things that I've focused on. So there was a weekly live show that I said I started before the podcast. And we're actually talking about how we can bring that weekly live video show back. There's the podcast. I now have a membership site, the Pelvic Health Professionals. That's new. One-on-one consultation calls that I do with yoga teachers. Something that I let go of was my Art of Assist training. That was a hands-on assist training. Another thing that's sitting on the back burner, I don't know for how long, is group coaching. So I would work with groups of yoga teachers. And for now, that's sitting on the back burner. Another thing that I love, but I had to trim the time down, is teaching one-on-one yoga in my community. And I'm actually even looking at how can I specialize and niche that down. So right now I teach yoga for pelvic health mainly, and I'm looking at what if I taught yoga for prolapses? And the way I'll try that on is just to take, a month to 3 months to talk about how yoga can benefit those who are dealing with pelvic organ prolapse. Not that I'd rebrand everything and switch everything. I would just try it on and see what it's like to put that message out there and see what comes back in terms of questions and conversation. A new part of my business in just a couple of weeks is that I am a presenter at the Toronto Yoga Show. Amanda McKinney and I will be presenting there. We're doing a workshop on how to fill your yoga classes. I'm really excited about that. And we're also hosting a one-day event. These are new things. I've done events, I've presented at different places, but these ones are new. So as much as I'm specializing and niching down, sometimes I add new things, I take things away, I set things to the side, and I just really want to highlight that this is a process. Alrighty, connected yoga teachers, I hope that there was some nugget in this that was helpful. I know I am super grateful for this question, Isabel, because it was a really good reflection practice. My hope is that maybe this is helpful to other yoga teachers who feel like they want or need more of a roadmap or direction where they're going. I have to tell you, I have never had that feeling like, okay, that's exactly where I'm going and I know all of the steps to get there. I do have a practice where I do write down in 5 years, this is where I want to go. But it's really looking back now where I can see, it's been bumpy. There's been twists and turns in the journey. And I definitely do not have all of the answers. But I am hoping that maybe me sharing this will help you to feel like, oh yeah, that one tiny thing, I can do that. That will help me as a yoga teacher to grow my business, to feel more prepared. So you're not alone in this, connected yoga teachers. We are all on some kind of a journey like this. If you are looking at someone else and you think, look how easy their journey is, I think they're not telling you the whole picture. Okay, I need to sign off. This has been a lot more reflection than I thought it was going to be. Thank you so much, Isabel, for this question. Thank you to our team, Suzanne, Crunch, Nick, and Sinead. Also, thank you, dear listener. You made it all the way to the end. I would love to hear from you. Would you like me to do some more Q&As? If you have a question, you can send it in. To send me a message, you can look for the button on the right-hand side of our homepage at theconnectedyogateacher.com. Before I sign off, Connected Yoga Teachers, I want to know what you will be doing this week to stay connected to yourself, your yoga practice, and to your community so that you can share the yoga that lights you up.